Adam Taxin talking with Rabbi Dovid Bendory of Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership about the current reading in the Torah, which is Parsha Pinchas in Numbers. Rabbi, welcome. Tell us a little bit about the Parsha.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here. This week's Parsha Pinchas, focuses on the character of Pinchas, who's one of the priests, the descendant of Aaron, Moses' brother. And Pinchas, at the end of last week's reading, picked up a spear and speared a Jew who was violating a prohibition against idol worship. Because of that, he's often known as Pinchas the Zealot. Now, at the beginning of this week's Parsha, God commends Pinchas for his actions, and in fact gives Pinchas a special covenant that doesn't appear anywhere else in our literature, which is this covenant of shalom, the Brit Shalom, which is unique to Pinchas, a covenant of peace. Which leads to the obvious question, how is it that a zealot who picked up a spear and executed someone on the spot is given a covenant of peace?
Reasonable question. Wait, Rabbi, one quick thing, though. Wasn't it people who were fornicating in public also?
Repeat, Aaron. Adam, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I apologize to the listeners for the technical problems we're having here. But, Rabbi, wasn't it a man who was fornicating with a non-Jewish woman as well?
Correct. So what happened at the end of last week's Parsha, there are two aspects to it. The Midianites had their women dress up to go seduce Jews, so go seduce Israelites. And they did this for the purpose of getting Jews to veer from the path of proper service to God. There was an aspect of that included idol worship, specifically the worship of Baal, which was one of their most heinous idols. And Pinchas, in response to a Jew having public relations with a Midianite princess in front of the whole community, picked up a spear and speared them both in the middle of the act, killing both of them. This was his act of zealotry. Now, there are two aspects to that act of zealotry. One was putting an end to the idol worship. The other was putting an end to the illicit relationship that was going on there.
Right. Now, getting to zealotry, which is the point, what can we learn from that?
Well, zealotry Judaism, Jews have an odd relationship with zealotry. On the one hand, being a zealot obviously is praised, as we see God giving Pinchas this special covenant at the beginning of this week's Torah reading. And on the other hand, being a zealot is not something to be proud of, typically. So how do we understand it? So I'll throw out a few pieces of it. The first piece of it is that Pinchas, what he did, purely for God's sake, purely for God's honor. He had no ill will toward the people involved. He had no desire with such restore the honor of God. So that's the first element, is that to be a zealot in a positive way, one must only be a zealot for God without any personal connection or personal benefits to be derived from the action. So that's the first piece of Pinchas zealotry. On the other side, of course, that means that one who takes up a mantle of zealotry or zealousness, and it does not in fact have such pure intentions, is of course not to be praised. And in fact, in the Talmudic discussion of this, what we learn is we shouldn't take on that mantle, because basically we are not capable of having that purity of intention that Pinchas had. Now on the other side, Pinchas gets this special covenant of peace. He lives an unusually long life, some 400 years. Some say that Pinchas lives on today. He certainly lives on in the spiritual, mystical sense. He got this unusual covenant of peace because of the purity of his intentions. And that's the aspect of Pinchas that we should all strive toward, is having that purity of intentions in our actions, doing what we're doing for God's honor, for the sake of the Jewish people, for the sake of the honor of Torah, for the sake of Bnei Israel, Am Yisrael, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, the people of Israel, the Torah of Israel, the God of Israel. If we can act with that purity of intention or even come close to it, then while we may not be zealots, we can certainly be sure that what we're doing is true.
Yeah, and this relates to the whole concept of peace through strength, I would guess.
Peace through strength is unquestionably one element of this. Pinchas, he effectively play the role of court and jury and executioner in taking up arms in defense of God's honor. And certainly when we take up arms in defense, or for that matter, take up the pen in defense, which we do more frequently, we should have that in mind. We should be mindful of what our goals are, why we're doing what we're doing, and try to have that purity of intention in it. Certainly in terms of actually taking up physical arms, it's required. One who takes up arms and is prepared to use arms for self-defensive purposes has to be very, very careful that they are doing so for the purpose of defense purely, not to attack. In the memorable words of Yoda, a Jedi uses the Force purely for defense, never for attack. And this is part of the purity of intent, purity of focus that we need to have as Jews if we're going to take something like firearm ownership, defensive use of firearms seriously.
Well, let me just thank you again and apologize to the listeners because we're having less than ideal technical situation. And people can find more about JPFO and its mission. This is Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership at jpfo.org. Rabbi Bendory, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam. Always a pleasure to speak with you.